Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fan Sports New York Varsity. I'm your host, Frank Langella, joined by my co-host, Marcilio Langella. And Mars, this is our Week 3 preview for Section 1B, C, and D, and the Hudson Valley Football League. We've had 2 really good weeks of football going on to our 3rd week, and I'm excited to continue, man.
Yeah, man, it's been exciting. It's been fun, and I feel like there's been a lot of upsets and ups and downs so far. And we're only on Week 3.
Absolutely. We're getting to the meat of the season. We want to welcome our fans. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. And if you're new, again, we cover Section 1 football, break down the games, talk about the players, give analysis, and make sure you guys follow our social media accounts that you can see on the screen. And you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We really do appreciate the support. And all our content can be accessed on our website at famsportsny.com, where you can also get merchandise and make donations to the show. All donations go back to the show, and we appreciate that from all our supporters. But Mars, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the games on slate. We'll do a preview of a few of them, and then we'll do our game picks. So let's dive into it, Mars. Again, for all the classes. Friday game, first one up, B matchup, Nanuet 2-0 at Putt Valley, 0-2. This is a non-league game. Going to the Hudson Valley Football League, we have Edgemont 1-1 at Ramapo, who hasn't played a game yet. So that's an interesting matchup. We have a C matchup on Friday, Hastings 0-2 at Dobbs Ferry, who's 2-0. That is a league matchup. Another Friday matchup, B, Bronxville 1-1 at Ardsley, who's 2-0. That game's actually, I think the news came out tonight. It's now at Harrison High School, but Ardsley's the home team. Then we go to Saturday, and a C matchup, Blindbrook 0-2 at Rhinebeck, who's 0-2. We have Woodlands 0-2 at Valhalla, who's 2-0. We have a CD matchup, Haldane 2-0 at Albertus Magnus, who's 1-1. Then we go to another B matchup, Westlake 1-1 at Pearl River, who's 0-2. Hen Hud, who's 1-1 at Byram Hills, who's 1-1. Hudson Valley Football League game, Horace Greeley 3-0 at Peekskill, who's 0-2. We have a CD matchup in Tuckahoe, who's 2-0 at Croton Harmon, who's 1-1. And then we have Briarcliff 0-2 at Pleasantville, who's 2-0. That's a Saturday B matchup. And then a Hudson Valley Football League final to wrap it all up, Poughkeepsie 1-1 at Irvington, who is 1-1. So those are the games, a bunch of games on slate. Let's get to a couple previews, Mars. And the first one I want to talk about, the CD matchup, Haldane 2-0 at Albertus Magnus, who's 1-1. And last week, Haldane won versus Woodlands via a forfeit. Woodlands could not form a team last week, so they get the victory. Albertus Magnus lost to Tuckahoe. And Albertus Magnus is 4-1 versus Haldane. They have won 2 straight. The last time they played was in the spring when they won a really fun, close game, 13-12 versus Haldane. But let's start with Haldane. Offensively, again, they didn't play last week, but the week before, I really liked the way the offensive line played in week 1. They did a good job of moving bodies, and the running game was really solid. I look at the running back, Evan Gianchinta, the sophomore. He had 101 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. I'm looking to see, because I do think they have skill guys, how this pass attack develops. Guys like Hombo, Gaines, Croton had a 70-yard touchdown run. They got some playmakers that if they can continue to block well, I want to see if they can get these skill guys some big opportunities this week, which Albertus Magnus gave up last week in the passing game. Defensively, again, I think the secondary is going to have their hands full against some of these skill guys on Albertus Magnus. One of my guys that I really like watching is LaRusso, who can line up in the backfield and out at wide receiver and can make plays. Slaughter Joseph, another guy on the outside. One of the biggest playmakers in the backfield is Savor. He had a long touchdown last week, about 38 yards. He is a speed guy, and when he runs off tackle and finds a lane, he can really cause problems for your team. So those are guys that you have to be wary of. The big thing for Haldane is don't give up the big plays. I like guys like Gaines, who could be a bit of a lockdown guy, but they got to cause some pressure up front. When I look at Albertus Magnus, I thought offensively they did some good things in the passing game last week. I know they got down early and they had to go into the passing game more and kind of went away from the rush attack. But they have guys who can win some one-on-one matchups. And it's going to be tough against guys like Gaines, but I do think they have solid guys, and they have to protect the quarterback. They gave up 3 sacks last week. I'm looking to see this offensive line step up. They're going to have to and run the ball with guys like LaRusso and Savor, who can make plays in the backfield. Defensively, they gave up way too many big plays. I mean, you give up 220 yards rushing, and you give up 53 points, Mars. As a defense, who I thought Magnus has a pretty solid defense, you have to feel embarrassed. And they got to come back this time, step up, and win up front. and allow those guys in the back end to make plays if you can cause some pressure. So I'm looking to see this defense respond. Mars, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, when I look at this game, I think it's going to really depend on the Haldane's offensive line, really against Albertus Magnus's D line, because Albertus Magnus really struggled, right?
Yeah.
And I think most teams usually don't struggle more than 1 week in a row. I mean, if you really struggle for 2 weeks in a row, there's some major issues you got to fix. And I feel like Albertus Magnus giving up that many points in his last game is definitely not something you want to do. But I think they're going to really address that in this game. They're going to play, by the defense, going to play a lot harder, a lot more efficient, a lot more disciplined. And I think that this matchup, the O-line against the D-line, is really what's going to set the tone of the day. I feel like if Haldane's offensive line has the advantage and they start establishing the run, then it can really get away from Albertus Magnus. But if the defense can step up and get their offense back on the field, then you're really cooking. I mean, Albertus Magnus can really make a lot of plays.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to another matchup, another CD matchup. Mars, Tuckahoe 2-0 at Croton Harmon, who's 1-1. This is going to be the first ever night game at Croton Harmon at Spencer Field. Mars, big moment for this program, who had a huge victory last week. Tuckahoe won against Albertus Magnus in impressive fashion. Croton Harmon won against Hastings in a bit of a surpriser. These teams have played, last time they played was in 2019, where Tuckahoe won. Let's start with Tuckahoe. And offensively, Mars, it has to start with that offensive line. Has been really, really solid for them. I mean, we know about Myers, the running back, last week at 101 yards rushing and a touchdown. But this offensive line has done a really good job and really has been a force that has created opportunities for multiple guys like Myers, who's already a stud, right? And he could do a lot of good things for you. But how about their quarterback, Annunziata? I thought he was really solid last week. He had 127 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns, but also 8 of 16 passing for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. 5 touchdowns last week. They've really created a two-headed monster with Myers and Annunziata, and it really is as potent as it is because of the guys up front. And you want to see them just play that game, right? Those two guys can make plays for you if you can create lanes on the offensive line, if you can pass protect, and that's kind of got to be the game plan against Croton Harmon. Defensively, again, said the offensive front was good. So is the defensive front. They do a good job of taking the ball away as a defensive unit. Last week they had 4 takeaways. They're going to be looking to do the same thing against Croton Harmon. And how about their defensive end, Reichelt? Frank's finest, Mars, had a fumble recovery for a touchdown. He had a sack and an INT. I mean, he hit the trifecta as a defensive lineman. He is a really solid player for them out on the edge, and he is someone that can cause some havoc for Croton Harmon. They might want to help out on that side a little bit. Going to Croton Harmon, though, offensively, they have multiple guys who they like to feed the ball to and make plays for them. Their quarterback, Jacob Jones, their running back, Ben Reed, who had a touchdown, Matt Stinga. They had 4 different players score a touchdown last week. They like to spread the wealth around, and I think that's kind of the philosophy that they want to go with. Multiple people can contribute, but can they get the pass protection to complete these plays on the outside against that Tuckahoe defensive front that can get after the quarterback? So that's going to be huge for this offense. Defensively, again, you're going up against a tough offensive line with that two-headed monster in Myers and Annunziata. A way you can kind of isolate both of them is getting pressure, right? So if you can create pressure, whether it's through stunting or whether it's your defensive line stepping up. I mean, last week they had 4 different players get a sack, right? So that was big. And so they're going to have to continue to do that. Again, it might not just be one guy. It's going to have to be a group effort, but they do have some guys who can step up. Again, I mentioned on the offense, Matt Stinga, again, Sean McKay, Gabe Calmieri. He was a Frank's finest on the offensive line as a two-way lineman. These are guys going to have to step up to give Croton Harmon a chance. They're going to be home. There's going to be a lot of excitement in the air. Night game. This is a really intriguing game. But Croton Harmon is going to have his hands full with Tuckahoe, Mars.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a great moment for Croton Harmon. I feel like those night games are like one of the best feelings for a kid. So I feel like this is definitely going to be a big deal for them. But when you take a look first at Tuckahoe's offense, the offensive line and the combination between them and Myers has just been fantastic. I feel like Myers is already a very skilled player. Yes. But then you have this great offensive line that just opens the lanes for you. I mean, how great is that? I mean, when you're an offensive play caller, like, well, let's just call
entire playbook's open.
Oh, entire playbook's open, right?
Yep.
And I feel like that is what's the advantage for Tuckahoe. The defensively, it's really going to depend on their front. They definitely need to continue causing mayhem as they always have been, and it has to be a group effort in doing so. For Croton Harmon, I think the biggest thing is that you have all the weapons. You have to try to, you share the wealth a little bit. And I think that that is an advantage to have, because now for a defensive point of view, it's hard to really key in on who's going to be the one that does it. But you have to create that illusion of who's going to get the ball, who's going to attack where. And if you keep doing so, I think it's going to give you a pretty nice, some cushion. But most importantly, your pass protection has to be up to par, right? You have to be very efficient, especially with this defensive front that they're going to send at you. And defensively, you got to kind of narrow down the ability for Myers to get through the line of scrimmage. I mean, I know it's tough to do, but this offensive line has been very efficient and playing very well, and Myers is not an easy guy just to contain, but that's obviously the game plan. It's really trying to stop Myers from really just running all over the field.
It's tough because Annunziata has been hitting some big pass plays, so it's like pick your poison. But I do agree with you. Priority one's got to be Myers. Let's go to another game, Mars, and this is a B matchup, and Hen Hud 1-1 at Byram Hills, who's 1-1. This is a non-league game, but two intriguing teams. And Hen Hud won last week versus Putnam Valley. Byram Hills won versus Westlake in a rematch of the Section 1B championship. Byram Hills is 3-2 versus Hen Hud. Last time they played was in the 2021 spring game where they won 21-0. But let's start with Hen Hud. And offensively, I think the start of the year for Anthony Panettiere, he's been tremendous for them. Last week, he had 3 rushing touchdowns. He's had 4 touchdowns total. He had that receiving touchdown versus Pleasantville in week 1. This is a guy who's kind of showed to be a force for this offense. He's a weapon in both the run and pass game, and he's going to have to continue to be that. And then I look at the pass attack. Again, they run the wing tee. They love hitting the tackle boxes, right off tackles, the counters, getting outside. But I do think the play action game is going to be big in this one. And a guy like Chris McGuire, he had a touchdown last week to Rocco Capisotti. I think he does a solid job in play action. This kid has a strong arm. It's about just being consistent with his accuracy. But I do think they're going to test off tackle. You're going to see rollouts. You're going to see those counter crisscrosses. You're going to get the full slate in this wing tee style. And they're going to have to, because they're going up against a strong front. All right, the guys who are going to be bigger than you, but you have some decent size too. So a guy like Whaling on the offensive line is going to have to open things up defensively. Byram Hills showed last week that they could beat you more than one way, and they're going to be big up front. But we know Hen Hud, they're going to bring pressure. They're going to be super aggressive, but you can't break contain. That's going to be the big thing. Sometimes when you're super aggressive, you tend to go too far up the field and they run underneath you, right? So it's what the word is, controlled aggression. They are going to have to create penetration. They're going to have to shoot gaps. You're going to see them be super aggressive, and they're going to need to be to try to slow down this Byram Hills attack, which showed them they can run the ball and pass the ball. Going to Byram Hills offensively, Mars, how about the week that Gavin Jaworski, the running back, had, the junior? He really showed out last week. 232 yards on offense, Mars, 188 yards rushing. He had 2 touchdowns. He was an absolute beast running behind that offensive line that did a good job. And their quarterback, Jared Cohen, he had 104 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 2 of them running the ball. Again, the offensive line has some good size to them, and now you're seeing that too. They're starting to develop a 2-headed monster between these two guys that can really make some plays. I was really impressed with Byram Hills last week, and I think that balanced attack, they're going to try to implement that again, but they have to be wary of the aggressiveness of Hen Hud. So this offensive line is going to have to step up. Defensively, again, you're big up front. It's going to be important for the ends to squeeze down those C gaps, because that's what Hen Hud really likes to attack. So you got to squeeze down those C gaps and attack blockers with the correct angle, because if you get sealed, the Hen Hud takes advantage of it. They have smart backs who know how to hit the hole. So it's going to put a lot on those edge defenders, those outside linebackers, and the secondary to make those plays. And don't get suckered in if you're as a corner, right? You keep coming up for the run, and then the play action is going to hit you, right? So you got to be disciplined. It's going to be really important. Mars, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, this is definitely an interesting matchup for sure. I feel like you have a Hen Hud who's been, getting better. You could see by their run offense that they've just been more efficient, and this offensive line has size to them, and they definitely need to step up this week against Byram Hills. And I know this is not technically a league game, but this is definitely a game to see who's the big dog. I mean, I feel like when you look at Hen Hud, they started off a tough loss against Pleasantville.
They got back on track,
and
now they're going to compete in that league.
Exactly. Are they going to be the spot where they were last year, where they were kind of just one of the top 4 teams, and are they going to be there or are they not? And Byram Hills, obviously the defending champs, this is a good test for you. And
yes.
I feel like when you're looking from the defensive side, I feel like you definitely have to hit on all your stunts. You have to cause mayhem. You have to really make this offensive line really work. And Byram Hills last week against Westlake, I mean, they ran right down the throat, and it was a super efficient. But Byram Hills just feel like they just melding in the right time, right? They're kind of seeing themselves as being the top team in that division, and this is kind of just be their momentum swing. If they continue to keep doing this, then they could just run away with the division. But for Hen Hud's perspective, they need to win this game to kind of propel them back into the. Yeah. I know it's not a league game, but it's still momentum-wise will push them in the right direction. Yep. Because if you beat Byram, that's the best team in the one division. You might give yourself a boost right there. So I feel like this is going to be a very interesting game for sure.
Let's go to another B game, Mars. Briarcliff, the Briarcliff Hamilton football program, 0-2 at Pleasantville, who is 2-0. This is a league matchup and a big rivalry that hasn't happened in quite a few years. There's not a lot of love lost between these two teams. And before the season started, I read an article about Briarcliff Hamilton. One of the goals was circled is to beat Pleasantville. I mean, this is a game that both teams throw the records out, a rivalry game. But last week, Briarcliff Hamilton, again, trying to accumulate back into the B class, lost to Ardsley last week. Pleasantville had a nice victory over Pearl River. And Pleasantville has kind of owned this matchup. They're 10-2 versus the Briarcliff football program. I call it Briarcliff Hamilton, including winning 9 straight. But the last time they played each other was 2015. It's been 6 years since this rivalry's been renewed. And let's talk about Briarcliff Hamilton. And offensively, again, Pleasantville's looking to stop the run, Mars. They're going to have multiple bodies by the line of scrimmage. And Briarcliff is going to try to spread you out and create lanes. But they're going to have to take advantage of some of these cover 2 and man-to-man looks, right? Pleasantville likes to be aggressive. Again, they tend to sometimes put their DBs out on an island because they're looking to stop the run. And you got to take advantage of it. I know Briarcliff is not a big passing team, but they got to hit on a couple plays. And to me, it's going to be big for them to win those one-on-one matchups in open field. Even with their quarterback or tailback running the ball, they're going to try to run outside because running in between the tackles will not be easy. You got to get the ball out of your hands. Defensively, again, last week, Pleasantville, I thought, dominated up front, and they're going to run downhill. And for Briarcliff to have a chance, they're really going to have to step up their physicality amongst the D-line and linebackers because when they come out in some of those power looks, I think you do have to bail out for the run and kind of leave your DBs on an island and force Pleasantville to again, you don't want to give up big pass plays deep, right? But if you can force Pleasantville to try to dink and dunk their way down the field, I think you're in a good opportunity because they want to hit you with the deep pass and they want to hit you with downhill running, right? So if you could force them to try to, methodically dink and dunk down the field, that's not their style. If you can get them to that, I think you actually have a good chance of competing in this game. When I look at Pleasantville offensively, I mean, last week, Kieran Cotter really stepped up in this downhill rushing tech. He had 3 rushing touchdowns last week, and I thought offensive line-wise, they won the battle up front. And this offensive line is starting to mold in the right direction. I thought last week was definitely a step forward. Going up against a Briarcliff Hamilton football program who has a smaller front, to me, I say this, in that locker room, it's time for us to dominate up front, right? Avoid the turnovers, get in favorable matchups, and win the ball running downhill. Control this game, dominate on the offensive side of the ball, and defensively, again, they're going to try to spread you out to create lanes. Pleasantville has a style. They want to stop the run, right? They got multiple guys being aggressive near the line of scrimmage. Again, you're going to have to tackle well in open field because they have quarterbacks and running backs who are shifty football players. And to me, if they can just avoid those big plays in the passing game, and sometimes they spread you out and send them on routes just for the quarterback to run the ball. So the linebackers have to be wary of that. Guys like Miller are going to have to spy the quarterback. It's going to be really important in this game, Mars. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this game, it's a big-time rivalry, right? And I feel like this is, it's been tough because they haven't really been able to play.
Yeah, it's been 6 years.
In 6 years, and I feel like this is definitely going to be a very hyped experience.
Yep.
I know Pleasantville is having their homecoming this week. So
it is the homecoming.
It's their homecoming game. So this
rivalry game, homecoming.
Rivalry, homecoming,
Wow.
you name it. Color wars, all the 9 yards. And I feel like this is going to be a fight for sure. And when you look at Briarcliff, like you said, they're trying to spread you out and they're trying to hit you in a lot of different spots. And for them, it's really going to be about can they capitalize on, I'm really trying to hit the pass, in my opinion. Defensively, I feel like they need to be more aggressive, right? They need to kind of be.
You're undersized, so you have to win with
in your
shooting
face.
gaps.
Yeah, you have to be in your face style of defense. And, and then when you take a look at Pleasantville, I feel like offensively, everything clicked. Everything clicked last week, and I feel like Kieran Cotter just took control, right? And it was a rainy game. It was an ugly game.
And that's, I think, the better style.
That was the better style for Pleasantville. And in my opinion, it's going to really depend on the offensive line. I feel like you have a lot of key players that can make plays for you, but it all really depends on the offensive line. Kieran Cotter definitely needs to kind of perform the same way he did last week, and then you have to obviously rely on LeCapri as the quarterback, and then you're going to have some key players like Daniel and Aiden McCart, right? They both can add a lot of versatility to this offense, and then you have young guys like Eric Coleman who definitely showed out in the Hen Hud game as being a player that you will have to look out for. But defensively, there's some young guys on this squad that really showed out. Specifically, look at Ryan Horgan, starting linebacker. I saw him was making plays like crazy last week. And then even at the nose tackle position, you have Cooper Kisley, who is a young guy who is causing centers to snap over heads. Mm-hmm. And it was a sight to see, to tell you, as a fellow nose tackle myself. It was interesting, but like I said, Miller is definitely leading a defense that is becoming. I feel like
they've had 2 good weeks.
2 good weeks in a row.
Yep.
And they have to make it a third one. And I feel like this offensive line is going to help the offense propel forward, but this defensive front is the same thing on the other side of the ball.
Let's go to the game of the week, and it's a B matchup, Mars, and it's Bronxville 1-1 at Ardsley, who's 2-0. This is a non-league matchup, and last week Bronxville lost to Nanuet. Ardsley beat the Briarcliff Hamilton football program. Ardsley is 3-0-1 versus Bronxville since 2004. The last time they played was in 2019, where Ardsley won. And let's start with Bronxville. I mean, offensively, Mars, there's no question about it. It was a struggle last week, and they had about 183 yards of total offense, and I'm looking to see this unit bounce back, and starting with their quarterback, O'Neal, who had a rushing touchdown last week, a dynamic football player. Guy can hurt you with his leg and his arm. He's going to have to be a guy who carries that heavy burden, and he does he has so far this season. But this offense goes as he goes. And so he's going to have to make big plays in both the run and pass game. And I'm looking to see this offensive line respond because they need to step up this week. And guys like Mays and the crew, they're going to have to make plays in the passing game because it is going to be tough to run consistently inside the tackle box. There's no question about it. They're going to have to protect the quarterback, and they're going to have to make plays in the passing game because Ardsley is thick up front. I know Garofalo they're going to try to run the ball, and maybe they can find some success mixing it up with the quarterback runs and running back runs, but I think they're going to spread it out. You got to be smart with the football. Do not turn the ball over. I got to see this offensive unit step up against a physical Ardsley defense. But I do think, Ardsley has shown at times to be a bend but don't break defense. So you can move the ball, right? There are going to be opportunities for you to move the ball, and they're going to have to do that. Defensively, again, I actually thought the defense played pretty solid last week, especially in the first half. They forced 2 interceptions, but they started to wear down against the rush attack, and they're going up against a really balanced attack that showed to be extremely potent running the ball in Ardsley. So this is going to be huge for the defensive line, guys like Mays and McCormick, and the linebackers, guys like Kelty. They got to fight. This is going to be a fight. You're going to fight against that front of Ardsley, which you're going to be a lot of banging. They're going to be a lot of hitting. You're going to get knocked down. But they got to drag this thing out, and they have to cause penetration. They have a size disadvantage, but you got to overcome that with aggressiveness. And they're going to have to, or it's going to be a long day for this defense. When I go to Ardsley, Mars, offensively, boy, what a start to the season Jack Phelan has had. Last week, 130 yards and 3 touchdowns running the ball. He has 293 yards, Mars, and 6 touchdowns in 2 games. He has been sensational for them, running behind this offensive line who has done a good job. But a guy last week, Cole Fiore, a sophomore, he had 109 yards rushing and a touchdown. It just shows you this offensive line has helped produce 461 yards of offense last week, Mars. They control the ball. They never seem to be erratic. They can hurt you multiple ways. But to me, it starts up front, and it starts with that running back, because they do have a good passing tag with Ballarge, right? They have weapons. But to me, what really makes this offense deadly is this potent rush attack. Defensively, the big focus that I know coach is probably talking about is keeping O'Neal in the pocket, right? You got to force him in the pocket, force him to make all his throws within the pocket. I think you got to take him away, even with the read option and even with the power read. I would bail out to stop him and force the other guys to beat you, and that's going to be the big thing. But it's going to put pressure on your edge guys, and I think Ardsley's front four can get to the quarterback. So, again, you might not have to bring pressure. Just don't give up the big plays. I do think that you want to see Bronxville not hit those big plays and methodically move the ball, and hopefully your offense can control the game clock. So to me, that's kind of where the mindset I would think if I was running, if I was coaching Ardsley, where it would be at. Mars, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at this game, I think when you look specifically, first look at Bronxville, O'Neal is definitely the offensive playmaker that really sets everything apart, and he's a dynamic player on the pass and on the run, and I feel like they definitely need to get him into the open space, get him to win those one-on-ones, right?
He's a game breaker. Yeah, so they got to get space for him.
Yeah, if he gets in the open field, plays happen right on a daily basis, and I feel like the offensive line needs to really respond from the previous weeks. They have to step up big time and really give him the ability to make a play defensively. Ardsley is a very good rush offense. You need to have the front seven needs to be in a fight and constantly be aggressive. They have to really try to close down what Ardsley can do and really try to close the gaps really quickly, or else they're just going to start pounding you, and I feel like that's going to be a really tough thing for Bronxville to stop. From the Ardsley's offensive side, I kind of mentioned the fact the offensive line has been just stepping up big time. There's only so much you could do to really get in their way, and they've just been dominant. So I feel like
the offensive line is power, but the running back is just shifty. So it's an interesting combination.
Yeah, no, I just feel like the offensive line is just creating holes, and then the Ardsley's running game is just finding those little crevices and making plays. Defensively, just stop O'Neal. Right, that's like everyone's game plan is stop O'Neal.
The other guys
force somebody else to be the one that stops you. And I feel like that's everyone's game plan. But we gotta see how well.
Week 1 it didn't work. Pearl River versus them. Week 2, Nanuet, it did work. So again, whoever slows down O'Neal the most ends up winning against Bronxville's offense. Mm-hmm. Right. Before I go though, we got to talk about the matchup. And to me, again, the matchup. I'm looking at the Bronxville linebackers up against the running back, Jack Phelan. To me, that is going to be the matchup that I'm watching. And, a guy who, I talk about running game versus run defense and all that. But the player to watch to me is Ryan Watson. I think Ardsley's linebacker, he's a wide receiver and tight end. This is a key cog in this team, a glue guy. A guy who doesn't get enough recognition. He is a stud football player, and that's someone I'm looking forward to watching. Let's go to the game picks, Mars.
All right.
You ready for them?
Yeah, it's ready to roll.
Again, we make these game picks. We put a lot of time into them, and I know some guys have some fun with us, and we always enjoy it. Again, you win, you can talk trash, and we'll talk trash some back. But again, we really do enjoy this part. But let's get to the game picks, Mars, and let's start with Friday. B matchup, Nanuet 2-0 at Putt Valley, who's 0-2. This is a non-league game. And when I look at Nanuet, the rush attack, we know about Moran, right? The kid is a stud. He's a Frank's finest for a reason. He really has had a good start to this season. And then you have Frondy on those rollouts at the quarterback spot. But the defense, to me, of Nanuet is what has really impressed me so far. They've only allowed one score in each of the last 2 games. They have been physical. I think they're going to step up again this week. And for Putt Valley, again, you want to make this game ugly. It's going to be an ugly game whenever you play Nanuet, but don't give up the big plays, especially in the run game, and see if maybe one of your playmakers can make a game-breaking play. But I'm going to go with Nanuet. I just think defensively they're playing at a high level, and this rush attack is a little too potent.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Nanuet as well. Their defense has really been surprising, and some of the most interesting things is hearing all the score updates and seeing like Nanuet makes the upset. No one was always expecting Nanuet to make the play, and they did, right? And they, like you said, when you play on their situation, when it's a rainy, gross
game, that's their style.
And they're going to be right in your face. And I feel like that, Nanuet, they want this game bad. They want to continue this streak. I'm going to go Nanuet here.
Starting 3-0 would be big. Let's go to a Hudson Valley football game. Mars Edgemont 1-1 at Ramapo, who's 0-0. Ramapo was on a COVID pause the last 2 weeks. But I'll start with Edgemont. I think this is going to be a battle between 2 talented quarterbacks. And for Edgemont, Gio Leonardo, dual threat guy who can hit some big plays in the running game, and also made some impressive pass plays. But I like the way the offensive line is blocking. When you look at Ramapo, I think these guys have talent. It starts with their quarterback, Gaines. But the COVID pause, again, you're not sure how many practices have they had, what's the situation. The guys are definitely dying to play a game. Are they going to be rusty? And I think they will be a little bit rusty. I'm going to go with Edgemont, Mars. I like the way they've played, especially last week. They put up 50 points. The offense seems to be going. Defense has made enough plays. And I do think Ramapo has talent, but I think it's going to take a little bit to get going. I'm going to go with Edgemont.
Yeah, I'm going to go Edgemont too. I feel like it's just really hard for a team to be on COVID pause and then just jump right back into it and be ready to play with no problems. Now, they're going to be very, fresh because they haven't had any previous games, but they're also just not going to be all there.
Right, how many practices have they had? You have no idea.
Chemistry and all that stuff. So Edgemont's going to be the pick for me.
Let's go to a C matchup. Mars Hastings 0-2 at Dobbs Ferry, who is 2-0. Hastings has had two tough losses. Health obviously is a big question. Going against a really tough run in Dobbs Ferry. You need your big playmakers to make plays for them to have a chance. Guys like Kennedy. I'm interested to see if Keith Capuano is back because he is a big-time player for them. They're going to have to pass the ball and cannot turn the ball over is going to be big. And I look at Dobbs Ferry, Mars. We know about their fronts, right? Offensive and defensive, Regalado. We know about Dan. But two guys who have been big-time two-way players for them, Marsland and Sanzo. Really solid guys. I'm going to go with Dobbs Ferry. I just think they have too much of a potent attack on both the offensive front and on the defensive side. I'm going with Dobbs Ferry.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Dobbs Ferry too. I've been a big Dobbs Ferry fan, and I feel like they just have everything clicking for them on the offensive side. They can really run the ball, and they just been efficient. So I'm going to go with Dobbs Ferry here.
Let's go to another C matchup. Blindbrook 0-2 at Rhinebeck, who's also 0-2. Both teams in a league matchup trying to get their first victory. And to me, I look at Blindbrook, and I actually didn't think the defense played too bad last week versus Valhalla. This defense is going to have to be physical, again, against a physical Rhinebeck team. But you're looking to find a spark on the offensive side of the ball, and that's I'm interested to see if Blindbrook can. And for Rhinebeck, they have physical players, but just they give up too many big plays. And for that reason, I'm going to go with Blindbrook. I think Blindbrook kind of gets the upset here and gets their first victory of the season.
Yeah, this is a pretty interesting one. I feel like I'm going to go with Blindbrook. I feel like this is going to be a big game for them, and I feel like everything's going to click, and it's going to be a kind of a
they got to find a spark offensively at some point.
At some point. I feel like this is going to be that week, so I'm going to go with Blindbrook.
Let's go to another C matchup. Woodlands 0-2 at Valhalla, who is 2-0. Last week, Woodlands had to forfeit. They couldn't assemble a team last week against Haldane. I'm interested to see them, how they come back and respond. And obviously, when you can't do, health is the biggest thing, right? So I'm looking to see how Woodlands comes back, how they respond to some adversity here, and I hope they do. I know, you want to see games being played, but I look at Valhalla, and to me, this is the quarterback Dawson revenge tour. He's had two good games so far last week, 152 yards passing, 52 yards rushing, and a touchdown. Valhalla's defense has been really solid, mixed with Dawson and those skill guys. With the defense has been playing well, Mars, I'm going Valhalla.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Valhalla. I feel like that they just everything's been clicking on in all ways. Offense has been very efficient. There hasn't been really a lot of issues at all. Rush offense has been pretty solid. I think Woodlands just has a little too many holes for me to pick them here, so I'm gonna go Valhalla.
Let's do another CD matchup. Haldane, who's 2-0, talked about this game at Albertus Magnus. Again, I want to see if Haldane can continue the play I saw on the offensive line from week one. They have the skill guys led by Gianchinta. They have the skill guys to make some plays, both in the pass and run game. Defensively, I'm interested to see how they match up with those skill guys, especially in the secondary. But I'm looking to see Albertus Magnus' defense step up. And again, they way too many points last week. You give up 53 points. You got to be a little bit embarrassed. I think they step up in a big way, and I think Albertus Magnus wins this game, Mars.
Yeah, I'm going to go Albertus Magnus too. I said in the preview that it's really hard for a team to really struggle 2 weeks in a row to that extent. And I think that Albertus Magnus is going to have a more of an efficient game on the defensive side, and I think they're going to pull away the victory here. I'm going Albertus Magnus.
Another B matchup, Mars. Westlake 1-1 at Pearl River, who's 0-2. Both teams trying to, step up from a poor performance last week. Westlake's defense, I want to see them respond, Mars. They gave up well over 200 yards rushing. And I know they're a defensive coach over there. And, that's not the type of defense that they like to play. They like to be aggressive. They like to shoot gaps. I'm looking to see them respond. And then Pearl River, I think they'll have more success moving the ball than they did last week against Pleasantville. But, defensively, they've had too much struggles. They give up too many plays in the running game. And so it makes me nervous. I'm going to go with Westlake. I do think they make enough plays running the ball. I think they'll have success running the ball. And defensively, I do think they respond correctly. I do think Pearl River will move the ball. I think O'Neill will have some success, Carbone. But I do think Westlake makes enough plays, they'll win this game.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to go Westlake too. This has been a tough one to pick just because I feel like both these teams, you're not going to struggle 2 weeks in a row. And I just feel like Westlake might just bounce back a little bit more. This will be a really close game in my opinion. I'm going to go Westlake here.
Let's go to another B matchup. Hen Hud 1-1 at Byram Hills, who's 1-1. Hen Hud, they're going to be aggressive. They're going to bring physicality. You got that offensive line going to try to move guys, attack the C gaps. Can they stop the rush attack from Byram Hills is going to be a question for me. And then Byram Hills, if they can continue to play that balanced attack they showed last week, they're going to be really tough to beat. They got the size up front to move bodies. Again, to me, this is a bit of a tough matchup, but I'm going to go with Byram Hills again. I really like what I saw last week from Byram Hills. I actually like the way they played even in week 1 against Ardsley. And if they can continue to showcase that balance, I think Byram Hills is going to, and they're going to win this game.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to go Byram Hills too. They think they just have more to the offensive side of on the ball here, and defensively they can match the size of Hen Hud. I feel like Hen Hud has some big boys up front. Byram Hills has that in spades too, and I feel like that's kind of usually the advantage Hen Hud has is the size. But when you don't have that advantage, I just think that Byram Hills brings more to the offensive side. So I'm going to go with Byram Hills.
Let's go to Hudson Valley Football League, Mars. Greeley 3-0 at Peekskill, who's 0-2. To me, when was the last time Greeley went 4-0? It's a really interesting stat. Yeah. Peekskill, obviously a team. Tough loss last week. Again, this is going to be a slow-growing process. And on Greeley, about Wall, who's been really big for them, Koku. There's another guy who deserves a lot of credit. Carl Doheny, number 66. He's been a real productive two-way player. He's going to be another guy who has a strong game in this one. I'm going to go with Greeley. Greeley is going to go 4-0 to start the season. Going to be a nice story for them.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Greeley too. I feel like Peekskill is just still getting there as a program, and Greeley is kind of hitting their stride right now. They're hitting everything they need on the passing game and on the run game. Their offensive line has definitely been a very good sight to see. They've been very impressive for especially in recent years. They've just gotten better and better. I'm going to go with Greeley here.
Let's go to the CD matchup, Mars. We talked about this one. Tuckahoe 2-0 at Croton. Harmon, who's 1-1. Does Croton Harmon get the huge victory? I'm going to go with Tuckahoe. I just think they have too much firepower with the offensive front and defensive front. They do a really good job of controlling the line of scrimmage. Now, Croton Harmon, I do like you see multiple guys make plays on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. And it's going to take a group effort. But I do think when the chips are down, I'm going to roll with Myers to make just enough plays. I'm going with Tuckahoe.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Tuckahoe too. I feel like Myers is just one hell of an athlete, but the offensive line is clicking in all ways. Croton Harmon, it's a great story to see them playing at Friday night, under the lights. I think
it's Saturday night.
It's Saturday night, sorry.
Yeah, night game.
Night game. That was the big thing. Yeah. A night game, under the lights, great feeling and everything. I just feel like they just don't have enough to beat Tuckahoe right now. They're just on a roll.
Yep. I'll pick this one. This is the B matchup. Briarcliff Hamilton football program 0-2 at Pleasantville, who is 2-0. Is Briarcliff going to do the upset? I'm going to go with Pleasantville. I really like the way they run the ball. I love the way they ran the ball last week, tacking downhill. The offensive line, to me, if they could play the way that they did last week, it really opens things up for Pleasantville because now they're being the head of the chains. They can dictate when they want to do the play action pass instead of being forced into the spread looks, which, they can make plays out of, but they're not as comfortable. This is what they're comfortable doing, running downhill. And if they could do that, and I think they will against a team that's a little bit undersized, I'm going to go with Pleasantville winning, and the defense has been playing well. So I'm going to roll with Pleasantville. Let's go to Hudson Valley Football League. Poughkeepsie 1-1 at Irvington, who's 1-1. Poughkeepsie, they have that Sam Moore guy who can hit big-time plays as a running back. They do have guys who can make big plays in space, right? And they do have a bit of some solid size up front. Irvington, I'm looking to see how they bounce back after a tough loss. Again, this is another program who's kind of rebuilding from the ground up. And for that, I'm going to go with Poughkeepsie. I think they just have a little bit too much speed for Irvington. I do think the game will be closer. I'm going to go with Poughkeepsie. Mars to win this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Poughkeepsie as well. I agree with you there. Irvington's still trying to grow back the program. I just think Poughkeepsie has just a little bit more weapons on the offense and defensive side. I'm just going to stick with Poughkeepsie.
Yep. Finally, let's round it off. Our game of the week, Class B matchup, Mars Bronxville 1-1 at Ardsley, who is 2-0. Who do you got and why?
Well, this is interesting. I feel like when you look at both these teams, they have something to prove. I feel like mainly Bronxville has probably the most to prove. I feel like they were seen as a favorites going into this season, and they lost to a really tough loss to Nanuet, and Nanuet, is looking like a powerhouse in that division right now. But Bronxville has a lot of key players. Now, this is obviously a non-league matchup, but this is just more of a representation of who's still a powerhouse, right? And Bronxville is playing up in the league, right? And now have to try to prove that they're a small school, but they belong in this class. So it's really going to ride on the performance of their quarterback. And I feel like when you look at Byram Hills, they're the
Ardsley.
Ardsley. When you look at Ardsley, they're the top dog for many years. Byram Hills won last year, so it's really, are we going to be the top dog again? And I feel like that's going to be really setting this game up. Ardsley is kind of the top right currently. I mean, you look at on their side of the division. I feel like you have Pleasantville, Ardsley, and
question mark.
The question mark, right?
And then the other side, you have Nanuet 2-0, and then. Who's after?
Yeah.
I have Byram Hills, but...
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's like Ardsley is trying to say we are the top dog in this class. Not even just in the division, but in the class itself. Right? And I feel like they have all the capabilities of doing so. They have the power run game. They have the ability to throw the ball. And the offensive line is clicking. Right? And I'm going to go with Ardsley here. The reason why is because Bronxville... they haven't proven to me yet that they defensively can handle a powerful team that's going to run right at you, right? They kind of saw against Pearl River, who was scoring at will at times, right? And then you look at Nanuet, when it was an ugly game, Nanuet just ran right at you, and they couldn't stop them. Now, Ardsley, it feels like they're going to do the same thing. They're going to kind of put you right in, they're going to say, hey, we're going to come right at you. And we're going to just run you right over. But I think the most interesting part about Ardsley is they have the ability to do more than just that.
Yeah.
Bronxville, you have a lot of skilled players. I just feel like you just don't have enough defensively to stand up to Ardsley here.
Last week I picked Bronxville to go on the road and to upset Nanuet. Obviously that did not happen, right? Mm-hmm. I do think Bronxville's offense is going to rebound and step up. I do think some of those guys in the offensive line are also going to step up. But I do agree with that. I like the way the defense played in the first half, but they started to wear down, and my worry is, will they wear down again against this power? Again, the running back is not power on Ardsley. He's shifty, but that offensive line can wear you down. And, I'm going to go with Ardsley on this one. Again, I had my Bronxville shirt last week. This week, I got my Ardsley shirt. So I'm going with Ardsley. Ardsley's going to win this game. They're going to cement themselves again this week as the top team in B. You heard it here. I said it before the season, Mars. Ardsley is going to show that they're the number one team in B at the moment. It's going to be with a signature win against Bronxville. All right, everyone, that was our show. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. We hope you guys have a great weekend of football, and we'll see you all very soon.